Hi there, I'm Eitan, and welcome back to the Wix Wiz. So if you're using OpenAI in any of your projects, then you've probably noticed that over the past month or 2 months, the API has slowed down significantly, and now a call can sometimes take 30 or 40 seconds. And if you're using an external framework or you have your own app, then you're less limited. But if you're using Wix, then you're probably encountering this request failed with status code 504 error when you're trying to use it, not for all calls, but for some of them. And in this video, I'm going to talk about why this is happening and how we can solve this issue. So let's get started. Okay, so let's first talk about a little bit why this API might be slowing down. And there's no way to know for sure, but just peeking around some of the OpenAI forums, we see that some people are saying that OpenAI might intentionally be slowing down the API, maybe to get people to pay for ChatGPT, or maybe because they're upgrading to GPT-4 soon, or something along those lines. I don't know. But in general, I'm not the only one who's been noticing that the API has gone from responding in like 10-ish seconds to sometimes 30 or 40 seconds. And this really depends on the size of the response that it's expecting. So if the response it's expecting is like 100 tokens or something like that, usually it's okay. But if you write a prompt that's like write a story and it's expecting, let's say, you know, a few thousand tokens back or something like that, then this can really take 30 or 40 seconds to get a response. And this would not be such a big deal if Wix did not have a back-end timeout limitation. And that essentially means that when we are making a call from the front end of Wix to the back end of Wix, the front end is expecting, not expending, a response within 14 seconds. So that means that if I send a request from my front end that says, okay, go to OpenAI and get me an answer, and then that takes 40 seconds, then we are going to get an error that says 504, even though the interaction between the Wix backend and the OpenAI backend worked completely. And we can see that if I go over here into my site and I go into the site logs, and let's just go over here and go here to OpenAI. This is where I have my OpenAI code. And here I have a console.log data. Okay, so this is the data that I'm getting back from OpenAI when I make a call. And if I go over here and I say, let's say, write a long story, just to make sure that it'll fail, and I go ahead and send that message, then let's take a look at our logs, and we'll see here that in our logs, we do get a response back from OpenAI, but that response is not displayed in our front end. Okay, so we got here the error 504. Okay, why didn't I see my site my site events? I should have seen that over here. Yeah, let's take a look. So if I go, let me try publishing data. Let's see. Refresh the logs, refresh the site. And let's try sending a message again. So write a long story, something that I know will probably take 30 or 40 seconds to come back. And okay, let's see. Okay, so here we go. We got back the completion. Okay, so here you can see that the story has been created and it took a lot of tokens to create it. But on my front end, I'm not seeing that response from OpenAI and I'm getting this 504 error. So I just wanted to highlight here that the problem is in the communication between the Wix front end and back end and not between the Wix backend and OpenAI. So how can we overcome this timeout issue? So I've actually reached out to Wix, and one thing that they proposed to me is to upgrade to some kind of enterprise Velo full support something, 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 and pay a lot of money and resolve those timeout issues, which is not the option that I wanted to go for. Um, and except for that, they pretty much said there is no way to deal with this. So there's a timeout. The only thing we can propose to do is to either try and break down the function into smaller parts, or to contact the third party service and ask them to speed it up. Okay, both of these are not feasible because I'm only making one call here and there's no way to break up this function. And there's no way to encourage OpenAI to really make this any faster. So in order to solve this, what I did is I decided to use the Wix Realtime in order to circumvent the communication between the front and the back. So let me demonstrate to you how that works. So if I go here to my website, what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out for a second. And okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add to the backend a real time. And the real-time API is essentially for sending instant communications between channels and subscribers. So when somebody can subscribe to a channel, and then when a notification is sent out to that channel, they'll instantly receive a message, and this can help people communicate between two websites or within one website. And it can be useful for kind of messaging systems or notifications or stuff like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up the Velo API for real time. And you can see here that we have two entries here in the documentation. So we have real time and we have real time backend. So let's start off with real time backend. And I'm going to focus here on this publish function. And essentially what this does is it publishes a message to a channel. So I'm going to go over here to this real time backend file that I created and zoom in. And I'm going to paste this right over here. And you can see that I have to set here a channel and an optional resource ID. And then we publish a specific message to the channel. And what we're going to be doing is I'm going to create a channel, let's call it chatbot. And since I'm running this demonstration in the Wix Chat AI, so using the native Wix Chat app, I'm choosing to do it in this specific way. But depending on how you are using AI in your solution on your website, you might choose to use something else for the resource ID, but you can still apply this same principle. And for the resource ID, what I'm actually going to be using is the Wix Chat channel ID. That's what I'm going to be using here as the resource ID. And I'm going to wrap this all in function. So const send message to front end. And this is going to be asynchronous. So this equals async and function. And then actually it doesn't need to be asynchronous because I'm not really doing anything here after the dot then. But I could just change this to await. So I could just have here await. And here we have the Wix chat channel ID, and that's something that we're going to need to pass into the function over here. Whoops. So that's one thing. And the other thing we're going to want to pass in here is the message, which is essentially going to be the response that we get back from the AI. And that's going to be also passed into this function. So the message. Okay. Awesome. And why is this equals async function? Okay. There we go. And I'm going to export this just so that we can use it in some of our other code. So I'm going to copy this function over. And then I'm going to go to chatbot. And this is, if you haven't seen the video about me setting up the native Wix chat app or any of my other AI videos, I do recommend checking them out. It might help understand help you understand what I'm doing here. But essentially what I'm going to do is that once we get the answer, okay, so this get response is essentially the function which calls this OpenAI function. So this is the actual function which interacts with the API, and this is kind of a wrapper function which does a few things before and after. And essentially, this is all happening in the backend. So the error that's happening between the front end and the back end is essentially in this return answer, because this is not getting back to the front end in time. So what I'm going to do is that before I return this answer, I'm going to call the send message to front end function. And I'm going to send in the Wix chat channel ID, and I'm going to send in the answer, which is essentially the last message that we got. And we need to import this first. So import send message to front end from backend / realtime. And then here we're going to have also a wait. And this is something that we're going to pass in whenever we're calling the generate chatbot. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to add this over here. Okay, so that's, I think, all we're going to need to do for the backend, unless I realize I forgot something later on. But from what I remember, that is what we need to do. And now I'm going to head over to the front end. So that would be our master page.js. And for you, it's wherever you're calling that backend function that actually activates and gets the answer back from OpenAI. So here, what we're going to do is essentially this generate bot answer. Instead of just passing messages, we're also going to need to pass in the channel ID. Okay, but there are some other changes that we need to do here because we need to subscribe the user to the channel. So I'm going to go over here to our documentation, and I'm going to head over to Realtime, and here we have the subscribe function. And I'm going to copy that over, and I'm just going to put it right over here under. Okay, and this import Realtime will have to go here, a top level. And here, so we don't need the subscription ID. I'm just going to get rid of some stuff that we don't need. We don't need channel name here. We don't need this. We are going to use the .then, but not with the ID. Wow. Okay, there we go. And I don't need this. Okay, there we go. So let's wrap this in a function. So I'm going to say const subscribe to realtime. And this will be equal to an async function. Do I need it to be async? I could just leave it with .then for now. But if you want to convert the .then to async, then you're going to need to turn it to an async function. And here we're going to subscribe the person to the channel. So we need the name of the channel, which if you remember, we called that chatbot. And we're also going to need the channel ID. Okay, so that basically means that this subscribe to realtime, so that's going to be the resource ID, and that's going to be the Wix chat channel ID. And I'm saying Wix chat channel ID just to separate it from the realtime channel ID so that doesn't get too confusing. And this we're going to pass in here to this function, and we're going to call the subscribe to realtime over here. So right after we have a channel ID, so I'm going to subscribe to realtime. And one thing that I want to do is make sure that we only subscribe to realtime once. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare a variable up here. I'm going to call it subscribe. And it's going to start off as undefined. And basically after we subscribe, then let's say console.log subscribed. And I'm also going to say subscribed equals true. And then what we can do here is say if subscribed, return. Okay, so basically this function won't run if this is true, which it should be after we subscribe for the first time. So that way, if somebody, let me try and think what might cause this. Oh yeah, so every time a message is sent, we won't subscribe to Realtime again. Otherwise, we'd be subscribed many times, and every time we'd get multiple answers. And then the last thing that we're going to do is that instead of logging our message and sending the chat message over here, we're going to do that inside of our callback function for Realtime. And let me just explain what happens. So once we subscribe, we pass a callback function to the Realtime, and that is the callback function that gets run every time we receive a message from the channel that we subscribe to. I also have another video about Realtime, which you can check out, which talks specifically about Realtime and elaborates on that, just so that you can kind of separate the two concepts and understand them individually. But basically, this payload is the message that we're sending, which will be the answer from the OpenAI. So what I need to do here is just say, let's say, let answer equal message.payload. And the channel ID is going to be the Wix channel chat ID. Yeah, okay. And this, again, if you want to go back and watch the video of how I set up this thing to begin with, you'll understand. But basically, log message adds the message to our messages array, which is basically the data of the messages. And then the send chat message actually interacts with the Wix chat API and displays that message. Okay, so that's what those two things do. And so now essentially what we've done, so this is going to throw an error. When we say generate bot answer, this is not going to work, but our subscription is going to circumvent that. So we still will get an answer from OpenAI just through Realtime and not through our original call to the backend. So let's go ahead and publish that and see if it works. I'm going to clear all this. And now I'm here and I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page. I'm going to do it again just to make sure that we're using the published, most recently published version of the site. And then I'm going to go and let's go into Let's Chat. And I'm going to write a long story. So let's see, subscribed. Okay, so that's good. We're subscribed to our backend, to our Realtime, sorry. And again, this doesn't solve the problem that it's going to take a long time because that's something on the OpenAI end. And we still got the 504 error, okay? But remember that this is expected because we are essentially circumventing this, but we're not preventing this. So the error will still come back, but if the Realtime works, then we should still see our answer here whenever it comes back. So here, let's wait until we see that OpenAI has actually returned an answer. So this, again, this can take 30, 40 seconds. This really depends on OpenAI and their times that they're adding to their API for some reason. Conspiracy theories, whatever they may be. And okay, web method timeout. And okay, here we go. Okay, so we got back, and I don't know if you heard that kind of that ring in the back end of the Wix chat working, but if you go over here, then you'll see, boom. Okay, we have the story here, and it's quite long. And this came through even though we got the status code 504. So you're still going to get the error code. So don't be alarmed if you see the error code. What you need to do is just kind of wait and see if after 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 1 minute, you get back the answer from OpenAI using Realtime. If you still don't get it back, or you're having some other errors here in the back end, then you'll have to deal with those. But those are unrelated. So I hope you found this video interesting. I hope it helps you solve the issues that you're having. definitely, I mean, if you've watched my previous videos and you've implemented those on your site, then you're probably experiencing this. If you've been using OpenAI independently and you've just happened to come across this video because you're having this issue, then I hope this helps you solve it. And if it did, go ahead and hit that like button. Tell me about it in the comments. If it didn't solve your problem, tell me about your problem in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe. I have videos usually weekly. I know I haven't posted for about a week and a half, but hopefully I'm hoping to get back on track soon. So if you like this kind of content and you're interested in seeing more about Velo and Wix and how to really stretch it to the limits, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button too. And I will see you next time.